25 years of fearless and independent journalism. Hello, and thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We are live from our studios in Kokomelemle on digital address GA0992539. Our top stories this hour. WHO wants Africa to prepare for the worst as other health systems are tested by coronavirus, and Ghana recalls 2 more cases. More as Ghanaians are also urged to manage expectations in the next 2 weeks, described as critical. We'll share with you updates of how the world is coping and the good news coming in, especially from China. Also in this edition, Parliament hastens to pass law to restrict movement in the wake of the coronavirus outbreak. But the minorities say the law is only restricting movement without dealing extensively with coronavirus, as they threaten not to support it. And also coming up, meningitis continues to plague the Upper East region as the harsh weather conditions persist. Join us on DSTV 421, GoTV 144, and on YouTube, where we are streaming live. Our WhatsApp number is 0540-10900. My name is Gifty Ando up here. This is The Pulse. Please be my guest. You're welcome. I'll take you through the details of those stories and more. Now, Ghana has recorded, as you may well be aware of already, 2 more cases of coronavirus. This brings to 9 the number of cases recorded in this country. The Information Ministry says both cases were imported. But Ghana is only part of a world struggling to contain a fast-spreading virus which has claimed close to 9,000 people and infected 219 other countries. This afternoon, we'll bring you the situation not just in Ghana, but around the world. Head of JoyNews' health desk, Fred Smith, who's been doing a lot of work on this outbreak, is joining me here in the studio with the very latest. He's first going to tell us about the cases in Ghana. Fred, what do we know about the new cases we've recorded?
Well, the Information Ministry has given updates on who these individuals are. The first is a 56-year-old man who traveled to the United Kingdom and returned about a week ago, and that person has tested positive. The other person traveled to the United Arab Emirates. He's 33 and he went there for a conference. He's returned and he's also tested positive for COVID-19, and these persons have also been taken into isolation and their cases are being managed. So far, the contact tracing is ongoing. They have about 15 persons they've contacted and are being tested, 19, I beg your pardon, who are being tested. They have some results and they're still waiting for some 4 more to go. So, I mean, all of those they've tested have been negative.
All right, but what do we know? And we also know the good thing is that there hasn't been any casualty as far as Ghana is concerned.
Indeed, indeed, no one has died.
Do we know, do people even understand the tracing systems, you know, that we're describing here? How do they even contact the people who are supposed to have come into contact with these persons?
What they do is to interview the patient, and the patient will explain to the health officials who they may have come into contact with. Of course, they won't be able to remember everything, but of course it will give an idea of where they've gone to, who they've been in contact with, and they will trace and get all of these people taken. They take samples from them and then taken to Noguchi for testing. Okay,
so that's the Ghana situation.
Indeed.
But of course, we're surrounded by countries that have recorded some of these cases. What is the African outlook?
Well, so far the cases are increasing in Africa. Egypt is still the #1 country with most cases. They have 210 cases. South Africa has 116 cases, and then we have Tunisia, Algeria rather, and Morocco, all following in that order. Not as much as we have in Europe and America, but we've been told by the WHO Director General that we should prepare for the worst.
We should prepare for the worst, and when they say we should prepare for the worst, Fred, I'd like for you to take us through some of the precautionary measures that you can take, which we've been sharing here on the platform before you go. Take us through it once again.
Well, wash your hands with soap and running water. no compromises. Use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Give distance if you're speaking to someone, if you're in an area. The president talked about social distancing. I mean, never go to an area where it's crowded. And now we know the Attorney General is trying to legislate that, and people will be punished if they do that. Yesterday we heard some pastors who defied the president to hold church services. They were arrested, and very soon anybody who goes beyond the directives that the president gave will be dealt with severely.
Fred, thank you. And that's where Fred just mentioned the legislation that is expected to cover this. We'll bring you more updates from across the globe. News just coming in that the number of cases in Ghana has risen again. Fred, tell us.
Well, 2 more cases have been reported in the last few minutes. It's confirmed by the Ghana Health Service, and they are in Kumasi.
Okay.
The Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research into Infectious Diseases. They tested a 59-year-old Ghanaian woman who is resident in the United Kingdom but recently returned to Ghana and is currently living in Kumasi. She reported to a private hospital with a history of fever in a temperature of 39.1 degrees Celsius. This is above the temperature allowed. And she had cough, runny nose, etc., and her condition was suspected to be COVID-19. Samples were subsequently taken and sent to KCCR, and the report was received early this morning. It's positive. The other person is a 61-year-old Lebanese male trader, and this person is resident in Kumasi. He felt unwell, reported to a health facility with fever with a temperature of 39.4 degrees Celsius and cough. The samples tested positive for COVID-19. Both cases, patients are being managed in isolation and responding to treatment. So far, the confirmed cases in Ghana are from Turkey, Norway, Germany, France, United States of America, United Kingdom, and the United Arab Emirates. With regards to contact tracing, a total of 399 contacts have been identified and are being followed up. 19 of these contacts developed some forms of symptoms, and samples have been taken for laboratory testing, and we've received lab results for 15 of them, which are all negative for COVID-19, and we're awaiting results for 4. And Gifty, if you check, we always get updates of which case is coming from. On this occasion, this Lebanese man, we're not told if he was traveling from any location.
Any country.
So
it just says his residence. He's a Ghanaian resident in Kumasi.
Ghana. So possibly our first case of local transmission.
Okay, of course we don't know that yet, but we don't have details to the effect that he doesn't live here, as in he traveled elsewhere.
So for all the 11 cases, we've been told where the patients have traveled from, except that.
Except this one.
Yes.
Okay. Right, so head of our health desk, Fred Smith there, who has just joined me in the studio with details of, this is breaking news coming in. 2 more cases have been recorded. If you recall, this morning we were told by the Information Ministry that 2 more cases were recorded overnight. That was last night. And we heard that from the president when he met with the clergy earlier this morning. This afternoon, 2 more cases, making it the total 11. Let me take you to Parliament, because the minority there is demanding the immediate withdrawal of the imposition of the Restrictions Bill 2020, insisting it does not meet the requirement of urgent business. Well, at a meeting of the Constitution and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament today, the NDC MPs insisted the bill does not deal with the issue of coronavirus spread, but then it restricts freedom broadly and should not be rushed through the House. Now, this law has become necessary, as you know, as a result of government's push to contain the spread of COVID-19. The following news desk report teases out some portions of the imposition of Restrictions Bill 2020.
All public gatherings, including
President Akufo-Addo announcing he had asked the Attorney General to ensure that a law is laid before Parliament in accordance with Article 21 to give legal backing to his directives on public gatherings.
I've directed the Attorney General to submit immediately to Parliament emergency legislation in accordance with Article 21, 4C and D of the Constitution of the Republic to embody these measures. And I further directed the Minister for Health to exercise his powers under Section 169 of the Public Health Act 2012, Act 851, by the immediate issuance of an executive instrument to govern the relevant profession.
The memorandum of the bill explains what it seeks to achieve.
The purpose of the bill is to provide powers to impose restrictions on persons in the event of a disaster, emergency, or similar circumstances to ensure public safety and protection.
It continues.
Government finds it expedient to develop a legal framework to provide generally for expeditious interventions by the government in the event of an unforeseeable emergency.
Clause 3 of the bill lists the restrictions the President may impose.
Restrictions in the interest of defense, public safety, public health, or running of essential services, restrictions reasonably required on movement or residence within Ghana and entry into Ghana.
Clause 3D is what some NDC MPs find worrying. It reads,
the restriction is reasonably required for the purpose of safeguarding the people of Ghana against the teaching or propagation of doctrine which exhibits or discourages disrespect for nationhood of Ghana, the national symbols and emblems, or incites hatred against other members of the community.
Minority Chief Whip Muntaka Mubarak says this is unacceptable.
I mean, there's no mention of coronavirus, and I also think it's too broad, and it's like wanting to give the president an unlimited or a blank check. I don't think that's good for our democracy.
It's worth noting that the 5-page bill is largely a reproduction of Article 21 of the Constitution. The controversial Clause 3D is actually a reproduction of Article 21, Clause 4, subsection C of the 1992 Constitution. It remains to be seen what changes Parliament will make once it begins consideration of the bill.
The House is expected to debate later today a report of the committee on whether to rush the bill, so to speak. Now, a member of the committee, Roxin Dafiamakbo, says the minority will not support it. He says the bill is structurally flawed.
Those of us in the minority, we are of the opinion that the bill as presented does not demonstrate any agency for purposes of which we have to consider it under urgent circumstances. This is because there is nowhere in the bill that coronavirus is mentioned. They only brought a bill regarding broad emergency powers to be given to the president. And we think that they ought to be very specific. Because if you enact a bill into a law, giving the president broad emergency powers, any unscrupulous president can misapply it. That's one. Then number two, there are structural issues with the bill. They seek, if you look at clause 2, they seek to create offenses and penalties provision in an executive instrument, which is never done in law. It is only a statute of parliament, an act of parliament that can create offending conducts, or that can create a statute that will criminalize certain conducts and prescribe sanctions for it. But this government wants to come up with an executive instrument that will give the president power to create offenses and create penalties for same.
So at today's meeting, the eventual decision that the committee took is that what? This bill will be taken under a certificate of urgency?
Yes, that is in the opinion of the chairman, but they failed to demonstrate that. And now they are saying that they brought it to parliament and we have power to tinker with it. But we cannot draft a bill that will depart from the tenor of the memorandum. So if they indeed are amenable to our position, which they agree to, then the bill has to be withdrawn. The memorandum has to be improved to accommodate COVID-19 and other emergency situations, which I think that every member of parliament, every single citizen in this country is in support of. We are all in support of what the president has done. But to seek to bring a bill that appears to be a twin of Preventive Detention Act or Protective Custody Act to give President broad powers. It's untenable.
So if you get withdrawn
under Article 31 of the Constitution, there are already provisions for the President to proceed to do what he did under emergency powers. The President has already given directives, which directives are already being observed, has already given directives, which directives are already being observed. So there's nothing urgent about considering this bill to give President any power for him to be able to act.
But if he gets withdrawn, then it's delaying the process. They say they would want to get the necessary support to deal with it.
That is also the mischief. The President has already exercised executive power. Okay, anchored for me, in my opinion, anchored under Articles 31 and 21. If you look at Article 21, Clause 4, C, the President can impose restrictions. He's done that. So that has already been spent. So what other urgent matters does the President require other powers to be able to exercise? None. The bill doesn't show it. It doesn't demonstrate that.
So in its current state, then they can count on your support to have it as urgent business and even to get this document
at all.
And when are we expecting the report of the committee on the floor?
Should be ready later today.
Nelson Dafiamakpo there, but the Deputy Attorney General Joseph Kwemka has been defending provisions in the bill. He says government believes that this bill in its current state is the best for the country at the moment, but then it can't be improved by Parliament if the House wishes to.
I told you that the President is not operating in a vacuum. He's operating within a legal framework. And if we do pass this into law, and then it is being implemented and anybody finds that the President is abusing the law or his discretionary power, can go for a pronouncement by a court to declare that to the extent that the President's conduct or actions are contrary to statute or law or the Constitution, then to that extent they are a nullity. You can go for that pronouncement. You see, we are not living in a totalitarian state. We are living in a state governed by rules and regulations. And remember that Article 1(2) of the Constitution says that any law that is inconsistent with the Constitution is to the extent of the inconsistency a nullity. So any person who thinks that what we are doing is a nullity can go and challenge it in court after we have passed it into an act. But I am saying that it is in response to an extraordinary circumstance that we are bringing this.
Which is that because the concern from the minority is that the bill itself doesn't mention anything having to do with the coronavirus situation, and that these are issues that the Public Health Act could have dealt with expeditiously.
I have given them an answer to that. You see, laws, as I've already indicated a short while ago, why do we enact legislation? We do it purposely to be able to fill in a lacuna that has been created. That's the purpose of enacting legislation. And we are saying that nobody ever anticipated corona. I did not anticipate it, and I know you did not. Now, this has sprung a surprise on us. And going into the future, another thing I want to draw your attention to is that you never know what the future holds for all of us. Whether or not, after we've overcome corona, there are others that will come up in future. We are not aware of that. So this is futuristic. So that we don't do knee-jerk reaction to situations when they arise. We are doing this in contemplation that any other future thing that will arise will be contemplated by this and will be covered by this, so that we don't go looking for making any other laws. And laws are made to address those situations.
Now, Honorable, I've seen that going through the bill, I've seen that the bill is giving the President the option.
Consequences in the bill before it is passed into law. We will have to introduce clauses that will, sections that will actually criminalize what His Excellency the President has actually issued as directives, and then the punishments prescribed for it. And remember that if you read Article 19(11) of our Constitution, it states that you cannot take a person or charge a person with an offense that did not constitute an offense at the time it was committed. So we are doing this to address all that, so that we make sure that we will, in debating it, of course, you are aware, I mean, most of you here are very well experienced, that we are not a conveyor belt. When they bring these things, we scrutinize them and do amendments, delete, insert, and all that. So I can assure you that we will be doing the necessary amendments here to ensure that we capture clearly certain actions and the penal consequences that are accompanying those actions.
The minority wants the bill withdrawn. Roxin Dafiama says it doesn't meet the status of urgent business. And so, unless government demonstrates that they will not support the idea of it being taken.
The determination as to whether or not a particular bill is of an urgent nature is not by one member of parliament. So that individual, that's his opinion. It is the committee.
That's the minority.
The committee will determine by either consensus or by majority that this is the decision. It is urgent, it is not urgent. And I know that a decision has already been taken, but it has not been brought to the floor, and I'm unable to disclose that now. It will be brought to the floor and debated.
So it will be a case of the majority using your numbers to push it through despite the minority's concern.
What if some of the members of the majority are persuaded by arguments from the majority? Some minority members may be persuaded when they listen to the arguments. As I have stated, I mean, we are not in ordinary times, and we have to go extraordinary to address the situation for the safety of Ghanaians.
But do you admit that there are problems?
Deputy Attorney General Mr. Kwemka there. Let's go to Parliament live now with Joseph Opoku Gakpo, our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent. Hello, Joseph. I'm hoping that the House at this point or people in Parliament may have heard about the latest development that 2 more cases have been recorded.
Well, on the floor of the House itself, it's not a conversation that has actually come up. The House has been dealing with a number of other issues. Just to mention that a while ago, I spotted the Health Minister on the floor, Kwekwajiman Menu. He's also a Member of Parliament, so I'm sure he came in as an MP to represent his people and to do parliamentary business. I spotted him on the floor, but the House has been discussing a number of issues, including the Vienna Convention, which is something that they worked to approve. Earlier in the day, they approved a loan facility for the Takrade market, and they've been doing a number of other businesses. The Education Minister was on the floor of the House earlier today to respond to questions in connection with Get Fund and the new curriculum. But the point you raise right now about 2 additional cases being recorded is not a conversation that has come up on the floor of the House at all as we speak yet.
What we do know, by the way, is that the minority does not agree with the way that this law is being passed, this law, the details or the content of this law which is being passed to restrict movement. The majority believes it is the right way to go at the moment. So both sides have raised their argument. Usually or typically, what will be the next step?
So what happened this morning was that the Constitution and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament, which is actually chaired by the MP for Finso South, Ben Abdallah, met, and there was a 1-item agenda for that meeting to come to a determination whether that bill that has been brought is actually something that's of urgent nature, which would mean that Parliament can then waive all the other requirements, including a requirement that says before the executive can bring a bill to the House, it should have been put out and gazetted for at least 14 days. And then when it's laid and it's referred to a committee, the House can only debate it after 48 hours after the committee actually brings its report. Those are all requirements that are stipulated in the standing orders. But the only way that the House can waive all of that is to determine the issue or pass the bill under certificate of urgency. At that 1-item agenda meeting earlier today, the minority insisted that they think there is nothing urgent in this bill. It makes no specific reference to the issue of coronavirus, they say, hence making it even not more urgent. They say the concerns that have come up with public health is something that can be addressed with the Public Order Act. So apart from Roxin Dafiama, who is a member of the committee, other minority MPs, including the leadership of the minority on the committee, have indicated that they are objecting to the idea that this issue be brought with, as a, under certificate of urgency. So any moment from now, what we are expecting is the chairman of the committee will bring a report to the House. We gather that the committee's report will make a recommendation that the House actually looks at the issue of the bill as an urgent matter, but it will report that the minority insist that it shouldn't have been so. So it will be a case of the majority using their votes to actually take over the process and push it through as an issue of urgent business. And then on the floor, if that debate actually goes down the road, then chances are that the House may have to vote if the minority insists on a vote count with regards to that. So all of that is expected to unfold a little later in the day. A while ago, the majority leader, Sechi Mensah-Bonsu, indicated that they are suspending sitting in the House for the next hour or so in order to allow for the Committee on Constitutional and Legal Affairs to finish their report. They ended the meeting about 3 hours ago, but the committee report itself is being put together. And when it's ready, MPs will reconvene on the floor, and then they will debate as to whether this issue should be taken as urgent business. If the determination of the House is that it's urgent business, then they would continue with the process in order to get the approval. If that idea is shut down, then maybe the bill would have to be withdrawn as is being demanded by the minority in Parliament. But all of that is still something that we would know more on in the next hour or two when the House resumes from its suspension, which has actually taken effect as we speak.
Well, Joseph, we will come to you then. Hopefully, the members of Parliament would have heard about the latest development and probably will have some reactions on that as well. Joseph, thank you. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo is our parliamentary affairs correspondent, bringing us up to speed. Now, what we know is that the Parliament is trying to lay this bill and pass it into law to restrict movement of people in this pandemic. But we're getting that blockades coming in there. The concerns being raised by the minority that how it will be addressed, we'll wait to see as and when we get over to Joseph again. But then there are concerns that the situation could get worse in the next 2 weeks. Yesterday, if you watched the press conference addressed by the information minister, you did hear him talk about the process of pandemics and the fact that it climaxes and then gets to a tipping point. Well, he listened to the information minister giving all of us that warning about what to expect in the next 2 weeks he describes as critical.
The health experts tell us that the next 2 weeks are critical in determining whether or not we will get significant community spread. They tell us that the general theory in pandemic management is that often it is likely that the numbers go up a bit before the curve or the situation gets better. Therefore, they are bracing for the possibility of some limited recordings of more cases in the medium term, but they continue to assure us that the systems they are putting together and continuing to ramp up are such that they will be able, hopefully, to contain it and ensure that we hold this virus in check. I think if you follow some of the graphs that have been shared by the WHO, usually it's a bell-shaped curve. It's a bell-shaped curve. And the challenge really is how quickly you can arrest it. And so the systems they are putting in place are not to say that they don't expect to see any more. That's our hope, that's our wish. But the work they are doing is to ensure that should we even have any, they can hopefully very quickly arrest it. And that's an important bit of information to put out there.
So let's try and learn a bit more about this theory of pandemic management. Joining me on the phone now is Dr. Kofi Boni. He is a senior research fellow at the Noguchi Memorial Institute. Sir, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, help us understand a bit more of this theory of pandemics. It says that it climaxes, goes up, and then it gets to a tipping point. How would you break this down to our, understanding?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you.
If you could speak up a bit for me, sir.
Can you hear me now?
I do hear you.
Yeah. So basically what it means is that where we have gotten to, yes, we have identified some cases that we are referring to them as imported cases. Mm. But these imported cases have had people that are primary contact. That is, people generally came into contact with these people. Mm. So there is a possibility that these other primary contacts will start showing symptoms. And when they start showing symptoms, quickly their samples have to be taken and they have to be tested. And as to whether they will be positive or not, The moment we pick the samples and we test, well, there could be some positives and it will, the numbers will go up, and there could also be some negatives. Numbers will go up. So that is basically what it is. So at the moment, we are in the state where we are, yes, we have gotten the initial cases, importations, but these people have come into contact with others. What we are hoping and praying for is that we don't get to a situation where we call the community, community outbreak. People have gone out there that were not restrained and now are in all over the place, and they are making and they are infecting others. But then if we should have this self-isolation procedures in place, people coming into contact with others and they start showing if we can isolate them and treat. Is isolation, you test, you treat, then more or less you manage or whatever it is.
I'd like us to talk a bit more about that. But before that, you talk about the community transmission, and you indicated from what you're saying that seems much more dangerous, is it?
Yes, it is. It is. I mean, if somebody is supposed to be self-quarantined and he doesn't do that, and he gets into the community, and he starts showing symptoms, you never know. Assuming the person picks a public transport, comes into contact with several other people. The people that will come into contact with are going to several different places. So that is where we call the community transmission. So you go there, you go and spread yours everywhere. So if you know that you have come into contact with anybody that either has been tested and is positive or not, you just have to make sure that you stay or you self-quarantine yourself. You don't go out. Self-isolation. So the period of the 14 days that has been established before you can go out. But the moment you go out and you start showing symptoms, anybody that you have come into contact with, that person too becomes a potential will get the infection. So you have to now go after the person too. And the contact tracing will spread. And you have so many people that now you have to monitor. And that is where the community transmission comes in. And we are going to have upward number of cases, certainly because a lot of people are going to get it now. But if we keep people restrained to self-isolation, then that means we have chances of killing of the infection.
So from what the minister said, from what you have said, and perhaps what we have seen on the world stage, the numbers are going to go up. It is to be expected. It's only a matter of when and not if. Do you think, from what you have seen and from your knowledge as a health professional, that we are...
So basically it comes back to the same thing. If we are practicing the preventive measures, it is one thing. But then if people are not going to restrain themselves, especially people who have known clearly that they have come into contact with people that are potential people who are having the virus, especially people that have been identified, are being monitored, and you are going to also go around. You see, that is where the problem is. The moment they get out, then there will be a problem. Like what happens, I mean, for example, if a person in the school gets a case and the school shuts down, everybody goes home. That's the problem, because a person in the school getting a case means that anybody who is primary contact, anybody who is closer to the person who was in this case, has to be monitored for a period of time. But if they allow them to go home, then it means that wherever they are going, if they start showing symptoms, they also have the potential to spread
those symptoms. It looks like difficult times, but I wanted to find out from you whether or not you think, from what you've seen, your experience, and what's going on so far, that we will be able to, within this period where we're expecting the numbers to go up, whether we'll be able to contain it from what we have, resources available, etc.
That resources available is a government person or political person has to answer that question. I mean, for us at Noguchi, our main concern is to do the testing. And the good thing is that it's not only Noguchi that is now testing. And we have cases here also in Kumasi. So if we get overwhelming number of cases, certainly some will go to Kumasi for the testing.
Okay.
So for us, they're doing the testing. I think for now, we are in the capacity to test as many as, the numbers that are coming in. I don't know when it will start escalating to levels that we cannot. But for now, we are managing.
Right. And that's the point that I was making, because even in the United States, they've had problems with testing as to how many test kits do we have available, which is why I come to you. So for Noguchi, for example, if the numbers escalate into the thousands, are we able to test as many?
Unless I check the resources we have at the moment, but if we are going into thousands, every institution will struggle. Every institution, if we start going up to thousands, we are checking, we are testing thousands of samples. Every institution, even the U.S. will struggle.
Yeah.
So, we will have to come to our wits end. So, certainly, if we start getting those kind of huge numbers, we will certainly have problems. Right. We just hope that we don't get there.
I asked this because yesterday I hosted some people here in the studio, and I've skipped the name of the institution has skipped me a bit, but they talked about how they could help, especially at the regional level and in the remote parts of the country where they could help with testing. They talk about is it molecular testing? I don't know if you have heard anything about this, and if
what we do is also molecular testing. We are looking at the genetic material of the virus, that's molecular testing, and that's what we do. And that's what I know cases here also that. Apart from these two institutions, Noguchi, I don't know of any other institution in the country that.
They talk about how they will be able to come in to help, and I don't know, perhaps after this we can link them up with you so that we see how that
maybe
could
now
help.
I should go to the ministry.
Right, not to you. Okay.
The ministry that designates the places for testing. So maybe if the ministry assesses them and they see them fit to do the testing.
Right. And then you mentioned also the isolation and the treatment, that particular cycle. Could you take us through that again?
So basically, when a case is suspected, the best thing is you self-isolate, you test, you treat. Basically, that is the sequence.
Okay. So you test, you isolate, and then you treat.
Yes. You self-isolate, you test. Samples will be taken if the person is self-isolated. Samples will be taken, you treat.
Okay.
Now they're doing the supportive therapy, so they do that case management.
So at what point should one go to the hospital and ask to be tested?
Yeah, so at the point that you start showing any of them.
Any or all?
Yes, especially if you know that you have just returned from a place where we have had case, or you have come into contact with an infected person. So that link should be there. It's not if it's not you get fever, you have dry cough, then you go. You see, if you are not sure whether you have come into contact with anybody, you can go. But if you know that you have just returned from a country where we have had cases, or you have come into contact with anybody who has been identified or who has been confirmed as a case, then you see any of the symptoms, then you go.
Okay.
Now, what we are not doing because of possibly because of logistics, is that if you have come into contact with somebody who is positive or who has been identified as a confirmed case, you have to go and check before symptoms start showing. We are not doing that. Basically, I'm thinking because of logistics. Because otherwise, a lot of people will come in that they want to be tested. Maybe I'm traveling, I want to get a clearance certificate or something, so I want to be tested. Maybe we don't do that. So you start showing symptoms, you cannot go to the hospital. You go to the hospital, you have to be examined before they take the sample.
And before you go, in the next 2 weeks, which we're told are critical, what should we be doing? I know you've mentioned being, observing all the personal hygiene tips that we've been told.
So the preventive measures that have come up. Even though you have been educating us every now and then, cough into a tissue and dispose of it properly. You develop a habit of regularly washing your hands, sanitizing where you don't have soap and water. Those basic ones. Make sure that the social distancing, 1 meter apart if the person is not coughing, maybe 2 meters apart if the person is coughing. These are the preventive measures that are in place, and And we have been learning from Joy FM, so I think you know more about this than we have.
Well, I've been.
Are you confident in the video already? And should we come and take it?
I know, but I don't know of any exposure to any person that has been confirmed as positive. But before you go again, though, we've seen what's happening in Italy, and I think that if you want to work with the pandemic curve, Italy has been all the way to the top, but they still seem to be at a very crucial point. Is it possible that even after the climax point, that you will still be at the tipping point and still go back to the climax?
Well, it's difficult for me to say as I stand here now, because some of the things, it's a new virus. So the way things are going, some of the things we can't even understand. We can't even understand. We can't. I mean, more research is going into it. Every now and then, people are coming up with papers, especially from China, of how they went through and what they saw. So we are reading more information about this new virus every now and then. So it's difficult for you to make predictions or projections into what is happening. Italy, yesterday, I think I heard that one day, about 475 people died. I mean, this is astronomical.
Yes.
It is straight. You don't understand what is going on there. So, as I stand here now, I cannot project.
Okay.
It's difficult for you to say.
It's understandable.
You can say something that something else will happen. Then that's what you said, and it's not happening. So why is it so? So it's difficult. It's a new virus. So we are learning more about it every day. So it's difficult to make projections or predictions about what will happen.
Doc Bonnie, right. Doc, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Dr. Kofi Bonnie is a researcher with the Noguchi Memorial Institute, and you've heard all that he had to say. You need to be careful because research is still ongoing about how this works, and so it's not really cast in stone, and it's not really what we know in the past. But there's been a lot of talk about self-quarantine and isolation, and you heard Doc talk about it as well, that if you know you have been exposed to anybody, that has either the symptoms or anybody that has been in contact with anybody that has contracted this virus, you should self-isolate. So what does it really mean to self-isolate?
Testing. So these are the people who are doing the work. These ones.
So let me take you through the self-quarantine guide. What it means is that it is a transparent self-restriction of a person's activities when they are not ill with COVID-19 for the purpose of protecting unexposed members of the community from contracting the disease should any at-risk person become sick. So essentially, you're self-quarantining because you know, even though you're not there yet, your exposure to the virus, somehow you want to watch yourself for like 2 weeks to make sure that you're not showing the symptoms or you don't have it. So that is what it means to self-quarantine. Keep yourself at home, and we'll show you a video that also explains a bit further of what you can do if you are to self-quarantine or self-isolate. So who should self-quarantine? Travelers coming from the countries or territories, areas with active transmissions of COVID-19 as analyzed and designated by the Ministry of Health. The Ghana Health Service shall be in self-quarantine for 14 days. So here's the point. If you traveled from any of these places that we've listed, the United States, the UK, Germany, Norway, South Korea, China, if you traveled from any of these countries, you ought to stay indoors, self-isolate for 14 days. Any individual who has been in close contact with a person confirmed to be having coronavirus disease should be self-quarantined for 14 days since the last contact with the confirmed case. Also, how will I be monitored during self-quarantine? For purposes of self-quarantine, you are required to provide your name, physical address, telephone contact to contact tracing team. So the contact tracing team, that is a team, the government or the health professionals working to contact all those who have come into contact with the person carrying the virus. You ought to make yourself known to them. Let them know that you are self-isolating or you are self-quarantining. Those details will guide their surveillance teams to monitor you whilst you're under self-quarantine, so that if in case you should exhibit any of the symptoms, you would be given the necessary help. Now, do family members or other people I live with also need self-quarantine? And that's the question. It says other members of your household are not required to self-quarantine unless they meet the criteria for self-quarantine as provided by the Ghana Health Service. And you know the criteria, as I've gone through already, which is you've come into contact with someone from all these countries that we've mentioned, or you are exhibiting these symptoms. Now, if you develop the signs and symptoms of COVID-19, members of your household may be classified as close contacts, depending on your interaction with them, and they will be required to self-quarantine as well. It is therefore important to implement effective self-quarantine. So stay apart from each other for some time, monitor yourself. What should I do for effective self-quarantine? You stay in an airy room away from other people, such as family members, preferably with separate bathroom and toilet facilities if you can, or if that is available. If you share the same bathroom and toilet facilities, you have to ensure that you disinfect it after use using regular household disinfectant or soap and water. The virus won't be able to withstand these. Now, if you're working, what you have to do is stay at home for the entire duration of the quarantine, 14 days from your last contact with the confirmed case is usually what health professionals recommend. Also, you have to ensure that you have adequate food, there is water, you have hygiene provisions, that you have all the toiletries, your hand washing facilities, you have hand sanitizers, all with you when you're self-quarantining. And then you take appropriate medical treatment for existing medical condition whilst you are in self. So say you are in self-quarantine, you have a medical condition that's already there before this, you make sure that you have all those medications with you whilst you're self-quarantining. Now, you also have to ensure that you have the necessary communication facilities. For example, you have your mobile phone with you, so you'll be able to communicate with your family members and other people who, whilst you are in quarantine. And you also have to always wash your hand with soap and water regularly, or use an alcohol-based hand rub or sanitizer. You ought to cover your nose and your mouth with a single-use tissue when coughing and sneezing. So in these times, you're not advised to use face towels, you're not advised to use handkerchiefs. The best is for you to use a tissue paper, and in that tissue paper you cover your nose, you cover your mouth, you sneeze into it, you hold it together tightly, and you drop it in a bin that is covered, properly covered. Now, there it is. You throw away that tissue, immediately you use it into a bin. You wash your hands immediately with soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub after you've sneezed or, coughed. You stay away from pets because you can also transfer it to them. There's a chance that humans can pass the disease to them, to pets. So you stay away from pets as well. And avoid sharing toothbrushes, utensils, dishes, drinks, towels, clothes, bed lining, because the virus can stay in these things for a number of hours. The virus can stay in a toothbrush for a number of hours. It can stay on utensils for a number of hours, in dishes, in drinks. The bottle, the lid, the bottle that you have the drinks in, or the glass, the towels you use to clean, they can all trap the virus, and you can transfer it to someone else. So avoid sharing those things. And what should I do for effective self-quarantine? Again, you clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces. So if you have a door, your doorknobs, the handles of that door, your bedside tables, your bed frames, bedroom furniture, you ought to disinfect them daily with regular household disinfectant, especially if you don't live alone and you know that other people may have come into contact with it. If you are in an office setting, you know that several people come there, like right here in the studio, we clean all our surfaces, you disinfect all our surfaces regularly. And then if you are if you develop or experience any of these symptoms, you ought to make that call. Now, these symptoms are acute respiratory infection, including fever. If you're coughing, you have a sore throat, if you have a difficulty in breathing, you ought to call for immediate help. And those are the numbers. That's 0509 497700 or 0558 439 868. Those are the numbers. You can just capture it with your mobile phone right now and give them a call if you experience any of these symptoms. Do not walk to a hospital. Do not walk to a clinic if you experience any of these symptoms. Just stay at home, give them a call, and they will come to you wherever you are. I know a lot of you have questions. I have questions too. And so we'll go through some frequently asked questions and we try to get you answers as far as COVID-19 is concerned. So our first question, what is COVID-19? COVID-19 are a large family of viruses that are known to cause illnesses ranging from the common cold to severe diseases such as Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, that's MERS, and the severe acute respiratory syndrome SARS. So what is a novel COVID-19? You've heard a lot of people call it novel COVID-19, essentially saying the new COVID-19 or the new coronavirus disease 2019. It is a new strain of COVID-19 that has not been previously identified in humans, which is why we're getting a lot of the health professionals saying we need to take our time, we need to understand this virus and how it works. You heard Dr. Kofi Boni that I spoke to, who indicated that it still has to, you can't really predict how this virus works. So it's a new virus. The question again, frequently asked questions, can humans become infected with COVID-19 from an animal source? Well, the answer is that detailed investigations found that the SARS virus was transmitted from civet cats to humans in China in 2002, and MERS was from a dromedary camels to humans in Saudi Arabia in 2012. Several known COVID-19 are circulating in animals that have not yet infected humans. As surveillance improves around the world, more COVID-19 are likely to be identified. Again, you know the symptoms of COVID-19, but I take you through it again. It depends on the virus. Now, common signs include respiratory symptoms, fever, cough, shortness of breath, and breathing difficulties. In more severe cases, the infection can cause pneumonia, severe acute respiratory syndrome, kidney failure, and even death. And we've seen a number of people die. I'm going to take a break. When I come back, I'll take you through the global outlook. We'll bring you updates from across the world, how the world is coping and what is happening as far as the cases, those recovering, the cases being confirmed, any deaths. We'll tell you all of that from Johns Hopkins. Welcome back to the show. So as usual, we go to Johns Hopkins and they provide some very good information as to what's happening across the countries that have recorded cases. Let's start with China. As always, like I told you earlier, we've heard that there hasn't been any newly recorded cases in China at the moment. We know that China has had to deal with 9,318 deaths. But again, the good thing is that there are recoveries of 84,532. Now, that's not to say that 3,249 is any mean figure. Those are human beings, and that's important. But more of those people have been able to recover. So 70,000 of them have been able to recover. So you can recover from this virus. So that's what's happening in China at the moment. We're hearing that there hasn't been any new deaths recorded today. Let's take a look at Italy, which has become an epicenter in Europe. Actually, one of the biggest, hardest hit besides China. What is the story in Italy? Now, Italy is looking at some 35,713 recorded cases, totally confirmed 35,713. Now, 2,978 people have died, but 4,025 have also recovered. Let's look at the United Kingdom. What is happening in the United Kingdom? Now, United Kingdom also because the cases we've recorded in Ghana, if you know, when Fred was here, he told us about the number of cases and where we're recording them from. The United States was part of it, the United Kingdom. Right, so let's do the United States. Let's take a look at what's happening in the United States, which is one of the places from where coronavirus has been imported into Ghana. 9,415 cases. Now, just a few weeks back, we were talking about no record at all. But now, 9,415. Now, what are they doing? They have more recovered people than the number of deaths. 150 people have died so far, but 106 people, I beg your pardon. Oh, 1,006, I should say. 1,006 have recovered and 150 have died out of the 9,415. So if you know, there are parts of the United States of America that's going into curfew. It's not a nationwide thing, but many of the states are having to go on a lockdown. Let's take a look at the United Kingdom. What is happening in the United Kingdom, which is also one of the countries from which coronavirus has been imported into Ghana. They're dealing with 2,644 cases so far. 104 have died and 67 have recovered. Now, if you look at the United Kingdom, it seems to have a unique case because if you look at the trend in other countries, a lot more people have recovered than the number of people who have died. But if you look at the United Kingdom, what we're seeing here, we're seeing that a lot more people, 1,004, a lot more people have died as against the number of people that have, 104 people, I beg your pardon, have died. Much more than the number of people who have recovered, the 67 who have recovered. Let's come to Africa. We'll take a look at Nigeria. Of course, we know that here in Ghana we have 11 cases. It was 9 this morning. In just a couple of hours down the lane, we're counting 2 more. So we've got 11 cases here in Ghana. I'm still looking for Nigeria to let you have an idea. But yesterday I told you what happened in Burkina Faso, which is very close home. In Burkina Faso, they recorded the very first death, which is also the very first death in sub-Saharan Africa. Nigeria is looking at 8 totally confirmed cases. Nobody has died yet, and 1 person has recovered, according to details that is available to Johns Hopkins University. But we also know that the WHO has indicated that there is a possibility that in Africa there are either underreported cases or cases that are not yet been discovered. Okay, and let's go to Ghana and see. Well, they still have 9 for Ghana, but of course we know that that figure has been updated. So Johns Hopkins is saying that 9 cases, no deaths, none of them have recovered. Yesterday, though, we spoke to health officials who say they are responding well to treatment, but that figure has changed this afternoon. It is 11 right now. Of course, there's still a lot more cases, a lot more countries that we can look at, but just to give you a few of the highlights, especially of the countries from which Ghana has had cases imported and how they are doing as far as those figures are concerned. Now, head of the WHO, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, wants countries around the world to put in place some strong measures to avert any further spread of the disease.
It's now more than a month since the last case of Ebola in DRC. If it stays that way, the outbreak will be declared over in less than a month's time. We would like to thank all our partners for their solidarity in staying the course in the service of the people of DRC, and my special appreciation especially to the government and people of the Democratic Republic of Congo. That same spirit of solidarity must be at the center of our efforts to defeat COVID-19. More than 200,000 cases of COVID-19 have been reported to WHO, and more than 8,000 people have lost their lives. And more than 80% of all cases are from two regions, the Western Pacific and Europe. We know that many countries now face escalating epidemics and are feeling overwhelmed. We hear you. We know the tremendous difficulties you face and the enormous burden you're under. We understand the heart-wrenching choices you're having to make. We understand that different countries and communities are in different situations with different levels of transmission. Every day, WHO is talking to ministers of health, heads of states, health workers, hospital managers, industry leaders, CEOs, and more to help them prepare and prioritize according to their specific situation. Don't assume your community won't be affected. Prepare as if it will be. Don't assume you won't be infected. Prepare as if you will be. But there is hope. There are many things that all countries can do. Physical distancing measures like canceling sporting events, concerts, and other large gatherings can help to slow transmission of the virus. They can reduce the burden on the health system, and they can help to make epidemics manageable, allowing targeted and focused measures. But to suppress and control the epidemics, countries must isolate, test, treat, and trace. If they don't, transmission chains can continue at a low level, then resurge once physical distancing measures are lifted. WHO continues to recommend that isolating, testing, and treating every suspected case and tracing every contact must be the backbone of the response in every country. This is the best hope of preventing widespread community transmission. Most countries with sporadic cases or clusters of cases are still in the position to do this. Many countries are listening to our call and finding solutions to increase their ability to implement the full package of measures that have turned the tide in several countries. But we know that some countries are experiencing intense epidemics with extensive community transmission. We understand the effort required to suppress transmission in these situations, but it can be done.
As Chief of WHO, Mr. Ghebreyesus there speaking about bracing ourselves for more, preparing as if it is going to happen to you. I'll take a break. When I return, we'll tell you what happened at the Jubilee House today with President Akufo-Addo when he met the clergy. Welcome back. President Akufo-Addo has been meeting top members of Ghana's clergy at a prayer breakfast meeting. The president says the nation must pray to fight the pandemic.
All of us are aware of the havoc the coronavirus pandemic is wreaking across the world. It is changing our very lives as we know it, and is leaving in its wake deaths and economic difficulties, and is spreading fear and panic throughout the world. The World Health Organization, WHO, tells us that some 180,000 infections and some 7,000 deaths have been recorded from this pandemic. We also learned sadly on Wednesday that 3 Ghanaians living abroad have lost their lives as a result. With 9 confirmed cases of infections, we might count ourselves as being amongst the countries least hit by the coronavirus. Nonetheless, the rapid spread of the disease across the world has led us to institute a number of measures to help ensure that our nation is adequately prepared to combat the spread of the pandemic on our shores. I made my first broadcast on the matter in this regard on Wednesday, 11th March. On Sunday, 15th March, 5 days later, in the second broadcast, I announced a raft of enhanced measures, which included the suspension of public gatherings, such as, unfortunately, church services, to confront the pandemic. Prior to announcing this decision, I informed many of you around this table of the impending decision, of the measures from all and sundry, including those I could not inform because of the exigencies of time. With the exception of that one incident yesterday in North Centresu and Kumasi in the Ashanti region, these measures have been adhered to. So on behalf of government and the people of Ghana, I want to put on record my deep appreciation to you and the entire Christian community across the country for this gesture of solidarity. I'm hopeful that the state and the church will continually find ways to collaborate for the good of Mother Ghana and for the improved welfare of the citizenry. I've also to put on record my equally deep appreciation of the support offered by the Muslim clergy, led by the Chief Imam, Sheikh Dr. Osman Nuhu Sharabatu, the nation's political leaders, traditional authorities, great and small, and opinion leaders for the measures taken by government. Eminent clergy, yes, we're screening all persons at our points of entry, with ineligible persons being refused entry. Yes, we've designated quarantine, isolation, and treatment centers for holding suspected cases. Yes, we have suspended all public gatherings, including those at nightclubs. Yes, we have closed down all schools until further notice. Yes, we have issued tribal advisories. And yes, we have urged all Ghanaians to observe prescribed social distancing and enhanced hygiene protocols, which happily they are doing. But as a Christian, a devout one at that, I know the healing power and saving grace of the Maker of heaven and earth, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, because in him we live, move, and have our being. The words of Holy Scripture in Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10 tells us, and I quote, "Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you." The Bible tells us again in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14, that, and I quote, "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forget their sin and heal their land." I'm always a little bashful about quoting the Bible in the presence of renowned priests. But I take comfort in the fact that the one thing that unites all of us Christians is that the Bible belongs to each one of us. These are not ordinary times, and eminent clergy. And in such times, a country whose population is predominantly Christian must seek the face of the one true God for healing and restoration. So I humbly called you to this prayer meeting for us to join together and pray to Almighty God to protect our nation, heal this land, and save us from this pandemic. In doing so, we're also putting into practice the words of Holy Scripture in James chapter 5, verses 14 and 15. And I quote, "Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up." I'm confident that this morning's prayer, which will be offered in faith, will help heal our nation and will help raise Ghana up. And I believe profoundly that we, the Ghanaian people, with our faith in the Almighty, will overcome this challenge. This too will pass.
And this too will pass, says the president. Any way you can help people who are isolating? Well, we just seen someone post this around on social media, and on this sheet the person has it says, "If you are self-isolating, I can help." So you write your name, you write where you live, your phone number, and the sort of help you will need. So if the help is picking up shopping, posting mails, urgent supplies, friendly phone call, just call or text me. He says, "I'll do my best to help you," and he says it's for free. We just, having this and thought of sharing it with you. So how are you helping in your own small way? How are you helping people around you? Social media helps. Let's see how we can help one another. You know that Jack Ma is also sharing some test kits across the world, including Africa. Gary asked me to tell you more of what is happening in sport, because someone has just shut down his hotel and is giving it to health workers. Before I bring Gary in, though, 18 residents of the Upper East region have been killed by meningitis outbreak there. The news has received little national attention following the COVID-19 outbreak, but Upper East Regional Health Director Dr. Osei Kufuor-Afre says this is worrying, as the late reporting of cases in health facilities in the region is compounding the problem.
With CSM, okay, we are dealing with cases of meningitis, and looking at the environmental conditions that we find in the Upper West region, around this time of the year, it's dry. It's very hazy and dusty, and also the temperatures are very high. As at yesterday, temperature was around 45 degrees. So these environmental conditions predisposes the people here to getting meningitis. So as at this year, from the 1st of January to last Friday, we've recorded quite a number of cases, about 137 cases. Compared to last year, it looks better. Last year, by this time, we have recorded more than 180 cases. Now, I recorded about 137, meaning the figures are coming down. But it's still high, because we really don't want people to be getting such diseases. And we've recorded also some deaths, which is not very good, because we expect that once people are diseased, obviously, they should be healed. And if we have treatment protocol for a disease, we don't understand why people should die out of the disease which we have medicines to treat.
How many deaths so far?
So far we've recorded about 18 deaths, which is quite high. It's quite high because once we have a treatment plan and all the measures put in place to manage meningitis, from health education to case management, we don't expect people to die, most especially when every year around this season we get cases of meningitis. But our little analysis showed that the deaths didn't occur within the same period, but at least some weeks we get 2 deaths, some weeks we get 3 deaths recorded from different districts. So that is a challenge. We also realized that most of the people who died reported to the health facility very late. Some were even brought to us unconscious. Some, terminally ill.
Gary R. Smith steps in with sports after this.
Thank you for staying with us here on The Pulse. I'm Gary R. Smith, and as we continue to evaluate the effect of COVID-19 globally, we can localize that story to the Ghana Premier League. If you've ever been to the Accra Stadium, especially since 2008, and you wanted something to eat, just at the VIP stand below, there is a very popular person there they call Emmanuel Ni Akrama Tego. He operates the Tego Kitchens, and he has been hit hard by the suspension of football. George Addo Jr. went to him to get his ideas about how COVID-19 is affecting his business and what perhaps government and the football authorities could do to salvage it.
Go to those people who play handball. The patronagers, they buy our water, they buy our food, they buy our drinks. Now there's a suggestion on them not to come again because of coronavirus. People who train in the sports who don't come at the same time, but they come in few numbers from time to time. Those who can come in the morning come. Those who can also train in the afternoon also come. And those who train in the evening. Now there's a suggestion that all of them should stop as a result of coronavirus. It will make a situation very difficult for us.
On a regular Ghana Premier League day, Tego Kitchen Services simply is very, very busy. We've got fans coming in trying to get something to eat before the game, during the game, and sometimes after the game. I have to say business was at its peak in the season because up to 5 teams play their home games here. The likes of Inter Allies, Accra Hearts, of course, Great Olympics, Legon Cities and Kumasi Asante Kotoko. That means a lot of revenue was coming in. There was bad news for Tego Kitchen Services on Sunday.
I've come into your homes again this evening to provide an update, as I promised, on the measures taken by government to combat the coronavirus pandemic.
When the president announced that, look, all public gatherings must cease because we're trying to curb the spread of coronavirus.
Stadium business succeeds on the number of people who patronage events.
We're here to just find out how that suspension has affected business down here.
No football. Passion of the nation almost struck out by the deadly coronavirus. And the football fraternity remains shuttered. With many uncertainties, unsure about when football resumes, and even more worrying, the uncertain economic climate for businesses connected to football.
Torosios Nyama Kobran Tego, Barry Benedictus, Nia Tego.
How long have you been working here? How long have you been in the stadium?
I grew up here. I've been in the stadium more than 3 decades. I started as toffee seller and then toffee and biscuit seller. I come through the stadium, through the gutter from the race course side. And by dint of hard work and God blesses, this is how far God has brought me. And when the stadium was closed for renovation for Camp 2008, I had the opportunity to follow Accra as a folk to engage in a number of friendlies with the liberty from professionals. And one of the encounter, I realized that there's a business opportunity because there was no water, there was no drink, and the people have to walk from the stadium outside. And at a point, I have to be saying, whilst I was selling my toffees and biscuits, I have to be saying to go and buy water for the people. So I realized that, no, next time when they're saying game day, I'll go and sell drinks and water. And I started it and realized that all that I took there all got finished. on more than same thing on more than several occasions. All this while, if I bought materials 5, I increase it and continue. So after the renovation here, I applied to the authorities that I would like to occupy this shop. In fact, they advertise for people to apply to occupy the place. So I applied, I did according to the request. I went through very ethic interview. And after the interview, the panel members who know me, how I started it, some of them knew me how I started here. This one I will not say because they are favoring me, but they realize that I endear myself to all the questions that they pose to me. And among the people who want to occupy the place, I deserve to be there, so they give it to me.
Tego Kitchen Services is a one-stop for refreshment during games of any nature at the Crossport Stadium. And this season has been very special, with 5 Premier League clubs and a Division 1 club playing home games at the Crossport Stadium. Practically 5 days of the week this season had fans troop in because of the novelty Monday, Thursday and Friday match days introduced.
You can get the full story on Joy News Prime later tonight. That's George Adu's story. And I'm Gary Smith with the sports. Be handing over to Gifty to finish off the news.
Certainly, Gary, thank you. And there's more news at myjoyonline.com. If you do log on, but whatever you do, protect yourself, stay safe. If you scroll all the way down on our platform, you see our YouTube link that has all of our programs. You can follow us from there.